I am 81 years old, and I want to tell you something that everyone around me kept silent about when I was your age. For most of my life, I genuinely believed that being a real woman meant being convenient for everyone, for your husband, children, parents, friends, and bosses. I thought that was what love looked like, that a woman's wisdom was the ability to endure and smooth things over. I was completely wrong. I spent 62 years trying to be the perfect homemaker, the self-sacrificing mother, the obedient daughter, the always available employee. And what did I get in return? Chronic exhaustion, buried resentment, and the feeling that someone else had lived my life instead of me. But 7 years ago, something happened that turned everything upside down. After 40 years of marriage, my husband died, and for the first time in my entire adult life, I was completely alone in total silence. I was terrified not only from the grief of losing him, but from something else entirely. I suddenly realized I had no idea who I was without those familiar social roles. My whole life I had been someone's wife, mother, grandmother. I lived inside those roles, not my own life. Where was the real me? What did I actually want? What brought me joy personally, beyond simply making sure everyone was fed and clothed? I couldn't find an answer, and that emptiness frightened me more than anything else. Let me take you back. I was 24 years old. It was 1966, a different time, a different country. Back then, nobody went searching for themselves. You were supposed to live like everyone else. I didn't want to get married, but my mother kept telling me, "He doesn't drink, he doesn't hit, he brings money home. What more could you possibly want? You'll get used to it. You'll grow to love him. Family is everything." And so I married him. He was a good, reliable man, and I became the keeper of the home. I worked a full shift, then came home and worked a second one at the stove and the washboard, then helping kids with homework and ironing late into the night. I stayed silent when I wanted to scream, smiled through the pain so I wouldn't ruin anyone else's mood. And here's what's truly terrifying. I didn't even consider myself unhappy. Everything seemed normal on the surface, but deep inside there was always a quiet nagging voice. Is this really all there is? Is it really just housework and the job? I silenced that voice for 40 years. At 37, I dreamed of enrolling in evening classes to study art history. I lived for books. But my husband said, "What are you thinking? The kids are small. Money is tight. You're already exhausted. Maybe later." So I waited. Then the 90s hit, and there was no time for studying. Survival came first. When the kids grew up, my husband started talking about buying a dacha. Then we needed to help his elderly parents, and he kept saying, "Just hold on a couple more years." And I kept waiting. At 57, I buried my mother-in-law and thought, well, maybe now I'll finally get to live a little. But then my daughter got divorced. She needed to work, and who was going to watch the grandchildren? The grandmother, of course. How could I say no to my own family? And once again, I pushed myself into the back drawer. Then at 73, he died, and there was no one left to wait for. Women of our generation were drilled with one idea. Selfishness is a sin. I comes last in the alphabet. We were told our worth was measured by how much we had endured, how much we had sacrificed. That is a lie, a terrible lie, because you cannot fill others from a dry well. If you don't love yourself, your care for others turns into pushiness and resentment. I gave myself away piece by piece, and when I was left a widow, I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger, a tired, hollow old woman staring back at me. The first year, I simply sat by the window. There was no one to cook soup for, no one to take care of, and life felt meaningless. For 62 years, I had dissolved into other people until one day I found an old postcard he had sent me from a student work camp back in our youth. He had written, "How smart you are, how alive, how your eyes light up when you talk about the theater." I sat on the floor and sobbed because that girl with the shining eyes, I had strangled her myself. Slowly, year by year, under the weight of pots and obligations, I had betrayed her dreams. I thought I was performing a heroic act, but I was simply disappearing. And so at 74, I made a decision: enough. I signed up for a public lecture series, got a library card, and started going to museums, not for the grandchildren, but for myself. I was the oldest person there, and I didn't care one bit. For the first time in half a century, I could breathe deeply. I started going on excursions, first along the Golden Ring of Russia, then further out. I learned to say no, and that was the hardest thing of all. My son would call, "Mom, can you watch the grandson?" And I would say, "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I have tickets to the concert hall." Friends would invite me to the dacha to dig up the garden beds, and I would say, "No thank you, I want to read." And you know what? The earth didn't swallow me up. My family grumbled for a bit and then adjusted, and I felt as though a concrete slab had been lifted off my shoulders. Now I am 81, and I have finally become myself. Not just Grandma Zoya, but Zenaida, a woman who loves painting and long walks and lives for herself. But my heart aches. I lost so much time. For 62 years, I lived by other people's must instead of my own want. For 62 years, I was comfortable furniture in other people's lives, and those years cannot be given back. So listen to me while you are still young. Having your own desires is not shameful. Living by your own mind is not shameful. Saying no is normal. Putting yourself first is necessary. You think your whole life is ahead of you, that once the kids grow up, once the mortgage is paid off, once you retire, then you'll start living. But the quiet times will never come. There will always be a crisis, a renovation, a sick aunt, or grandchildren. Before you know it, you'll be 70 and you still won't have lived. Don't repeat my story. Don't wait for someone to come along and give you permission to be happy. Nobody is going to say, "Well done, you've suffered enough, now rest." You have to claim that right yourself. Want to study? Go. Don't wait for the kids to finish school. Want to change jobs? Change them. Don't cling to stability if it makes you sick. Walk away from people who make you feel worthless. Don't endure for the sake of an apartment, for the appearance of a complete family, or out of fear that nobody needs you. It is never too late. Life is not a rough draft. You don't get to write a clean copy. This is the only edition that exists, and every day you put up with something you hate is a day thrown in the trash. I know what you're thinking, but what about duty? What will people say? Here is my answer. You can be a decent person and still have personal boundaries. You can love your family and still not be their servant. In fact, when you are happy, you become a better mother and wife, because an exhausted, broken horse cannot warm anyone. It can only inspire pity or irritation. We Soviet women were taught to endure, taught that thinking about yourself was shameful, that you should live for society and family. And we excelled at it. We ground ourselves to dust. But you live in a different time and you have a choice. Don't waste your life trying to be good for everyone. You can never please everyone. There will always be someone who calls you selfish, who takes offense, who wants more. But only one thing truly matters. Can you honestly look in the mirror and smile at your own reflection? I look at young women today and see the same mistakes. They pile everything onto themselves just the same. They fear hurting others just the same. They put their lives on hold just the same. I want to grab them by the shoulders and shout, "Wake up, you are the only you there is. Your dreams matter simply because they are yours." It took me 74 years to allow myself to be, rather than just appear to be. Don't spend 74 years on it. Understand this now, and your old age will thank you. I am 81. I have been living my own life for only 7 years, and they are the best 7 years of my life. I am happier than I ever was in my youth, and I am finally free. But I would give anything to have seen clearly sooner, at 37 instead of 74, to have been unafraid of judgment, to have stopped being a doormat. You have time, but only if you start today. Stop waiting for the right moment. The right moment is right now. Life is moving forward. What will you do with it? Will you live it for someone else's approval? Or will you wake up at 81 bitter that you missed your own show? Having spent it all sitting in the cloakroom? The choice is yours. Make it now. If my words have touched something in you, pass them on to other women, to those who are pulling the weight on their last reserves of strength, to those who have forgotten the last time they wanted something for themselves. Permission to live has been granted. Go and live. I embrace each and every one of you tightly. Fear nothing. Take care of yourselves and your one and only life, girls. Goodbye.